All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Derby City Fandom podcast. My name is Kenny, joined, as always, with my friends here, Jake and Colin. Gentlemen, welcome back.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, Kenny. How you been?
Been doing all right. As of recently here, The Last of Us has finished its first season of HBO.
End of the world.
End of the world, fun kind of, instead of like zombie virus, it's a fungal zombie virus.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. So our focus for today's episode is going to be a quick overview of the show, some, I guess, background knowledge on the game and how they kind of mirror each other and how they differ from each other.
Have you all played the game?
I have.
Colin, have you?
No.
Yeah, I haven't played either. So we'll have to.
I'll go into
to
that bit
Kenny.
a little bit later on. So I'm going to start out by saying that this is probably one of the best video game adaptations to any sort of like TV screen that has ever been like created series wise.
Are there many?
You don't have too many.
There's a few.
There's a few. The Witcher is probably like the close second, but that was a book series first, then made into a video game, then made into the show.
Don't forget about that Halo series that was on Paramount.
Paramount Plus. Yeah, I hear that was a letdown. We can go.
I can tell you exactly how that show was because I actually watched it. I downloaded Paramount just to see how this show would turn out. And quick side note, the IMDb for that series was 7.1 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes was 70%, which I think is a little bit on the high side,
Right.
personally.
Wait, that was the score for Halo or The Last of
the
Us?
Halo series.
What's the score for The Last of Us?
It's a 9.
9
It
out
is-
of 10,
Whoa.
and then a 90% on Rotten.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it
Oh
got
my
high.
gosh.
Yeah.
which is why I say it's probably the best one that they've done. It's very accurate to the source material.
I mean, it's good. I don't know if it's 9 out of 10 good.
Okay, well,
It's just like your opinion, man.
Man.
and that's what this podcast is all
Maybe
about.
it's a 9, just
Us
because it
telling
has
Jake he's
Pedro.
wrong.
Pedro makes it a 9. If it wasn't for Pedro, it'd be more like an 8.
Okay, fair enough.
Facts.
So
Freaking Prince Oberyn.
I don't want to spoil too much, but this is going to be a spoiler cast. So if you haven't seen The Last of Us, we definitely recommend going to go watch it, at least a handful of episodes. It's out in its entirety for its first season. So this is your spoiler warning. 3, 2, 1. Boys, let's talk.
I want to start off by saying something.
Go ahead.
The very beginning of the series, we're
Yep.
introduced to this TV cast, and they're talking about a potential virus,
Yeah.
and that takes place in like the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around there. I just want to point out the main doctor who is bringing all this information to light. Y'all know who that is?
I don't recall.
He's in The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
Was it Brendan
who
Fraser?
just won an Oscar,
Yeah.
by the way, for The Whale.
Focus, Colin. Focus.
Anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool that a lot of characters,
Yeah,
actors.
they got a lot of cameos. Like one.
Yeah, they
Not a
definitely
lot,
have a lot
but
of
they have a handful.
they have a lot of cameos, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, Kenny, take over.
Okay, so almost immediately from the beginning, we are shown the similarities between the series and the game, where you witness all hell break loose, and basically Joel's daughter's unfortunate death at the very beginning, within
Sarah.
like the first like 30 minutes of gameplay, happens pretty early on in the show as well. And then you get the 20-year leap.
To 2023, which is the current year that we're in. And I think the show, honestly, kind of, it might trigger a little people because we just got out of the pandemic ourselves. So
I mean, I think that's probably why they held off on releasing it.
No, they should have done it during 2020. That way people
Did they
can
start
relate.
filming it before?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awkward. Wow.
Yeah,
I did
they,
not know.
no, they were definitely doing it, and everybody had to wear a face mask when they were on set.
Yeah.
Just kind of like
Kind of on the nose a little bit, right?
Yeah, it is. It was fun though. I enjoyed it. Anyway, continue, Kenny.
So from there, time skip happens. 20 years later, we then
That
get
caught me
Joel
off
and
guard. Can we talk about that for a second? Because
Sure.
I never played the video game. So when the very first episode I'm watching this series, I'm like, oh, this is really awesome. This is really interesting. This is really fun to watch. But then I don't know if it's like the end of the first episode or maybe the start of the second one. They're like 20 years later. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what a
Yeah.
weird time leap. I
I
get it why
mean-
they do it. Like, it makes sense now. Now that I've
yeah,
watched
it
the
just makes
season.
sense. Like, okay, the world has effectively ended in those 20 years. Everything's kind of gone to shit. You only have a handful of like outcroppings of like society and order kind of doing their thing. And how well that works and how well it doesn't work. So we get the I remember the group's name in the second game. But you have basically the police force that is like the old remnants of the
What do they call it? Fedra?
Fedra.
Versus the Fireflies?
Fedra
Yes,
Fireflies
okay.
and
Fedra and the Fireflies. The Fireflies being the
terrorists.
terrorists / revolutionaries, however you want to kind of view it, right? And everything kind of involved with that. Joel and Tess get the bad end of a deal, and they basically have to go through this long, elaborate way to get a car battery.
Does the game start out in Boston? Like the
Yes.
show?
Yes. So when I say that this is a very accurate representation of the game, it is not exactly 1-to-1 because of how the game works. The gameplay is like, okay, kind of like exploration for a good chunk, and then you get like a 15-20 minute section of like, okay, how do we avoid the clickers? How do we avoid the infected? And then you have like more time in between, and then you have to fight raiders. So it's basically a pause in action, another pause in action. That's kind of how the game is set up. They don't really do that in the show because that gets real boring real quick. So there's some kind of differences there.
I never did follow. I know they like briefly touched on it in the series, like the different, I don't know what you call them, different variants, different versions of the infected. I know you mentioned like clickers.
Yeah.
Does the game go into more details about that?
Kind of, sort of. I think they just explained that these are the ones that are like blind. They're called clickers because they click. But the thing that makes them dangerous is that they got real good hearing. Also, they have a tendency just to lie still until something triggers them to like respond. So, and how do I explain this? So, for example, in the game, you can go to like a town, so to speak, and this town could seem desolate, but there could just be like a horde of clickers just there waiting for something to actually show up to trigger all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes them dangerous.
Yeah, so all the what they call it, the wires that come out of them, or the fibers, if you will, that grow into the ground, and they basically can all be connected with one another.
Yes,
so you see that scene where they're up in the skyline or on top of a building, and they see that the sun basically shines over like a group of them.
Yeah.
And then you see them all react to the sunlight, and they're all connected basically. So
Yeah.
I
The
feel
mushroom hive mind kind of thing.
which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't really want to spoil too much of the show, but you do get some key moments that carry over incredibly well onto the screen from the game and into the series.
For example,
The opening. The second one is when Tess gets bit and how she goes out. When you deal with, I believe it's Bill and Frank.
Bill and Frank.
And their relationship and how they deal with the other getting bit and all that. None of this show is particularly happy.
So when you play the game, Kenny, do you always play as Joel?
Yes, in this first one, you primarily play as Joel.
Okay, so he's just, I guess, in terms of the video game, so when he goes to like Bill and Frank's house, is he just interacting with them? Or
he's interacting with them, but also you have Ellie's interaction with them and how they kind of mingle with each other, like how they interact with each other. And it gets real heavy at times because very few people actually know that Ellie is immune to the fungal infection that is, into the world. It hits especially hard when the one character is like in the same like room with her dying from the infection when both of them got bit, and Ellie is in full knowledge that she's not going to die, but the other girl does not know that.
Recap again. Are you talking about when Ellie's mother?
No, Ellie and Riley. That's who we're talking about.
Riley,
I'm talking about
yes.
in the mall.
Yeah.
Yes.
She is not. No, I kind of disagree with you there. I don't think she knows at that point. They're both under the impression that this is the end. Right? Like you remember in the series, they say whether it's 2 minutes or
Yeah, I don't think Ellie knows.
She didn't have in the show. It's not introduced like she knows that she's gonna be fine. It's more like, hey, we're in this together. Rather, I kill you, I kill myself, that kind of thing. But like they're both infected, they're both sitting there, they're both bonding. But
Right.
she ends up killing Riley, and then nothing really happens to her. So I think that's when she starts to figure out.
Was that a flashback sequence then? Because
Yes.
in my brain, when she meets Joel, she's already been bit for like 2-3 weeks by that point.
Correct.
And nothing had happened. So,
Right.
Okay, that's my confusion then.
I thought you were talking about when this is later on in the season, in the series, but when they show Ellie's mother getting bit.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch that close enough because there's other. Who found her?
Who found who?
Ellie, the little baby.
That was Marlene.
Yes,
The
Marlene.
Firefly.
Yeah, that was Marlene.
So was Ellie's mother part of the Fireflies?
I think it's implied. So the weird thing about that is that Ellie's mother is not in the first game. And the first game is the one that I have the most like memory of.
Okay.
So that is something that Neil Druckmann wanted to include into the series because it felt like it would explain a little bit better Ellie's kind of origin story.
Yeah, I mean, so do you have any comments on that, Colin? Because I was a little confused
the way it
from the
turns out,
series.
the way it turns out in that episode, it's the very beginning of the last episode, I believe, and she is pregnant, basically going and she's having contractions, and she's running away from. I almost wanted to say a White Walker. No, she's running away from one of the infected, and she goes into this abandoned house. But the thing that I was kind of confused about was she was going into the house saying, is anybody here? Like she knows who lives there. Like somebody was supposed to be there, but nobody was in the house at all. So she goes upstairs, kind of barricades the room with like a door or a chair, I mean, and she, her water breaks and whatnot, and she's trying to give birth, but one of the infected gets into the room and she kills it with a knife that we find out later on that's the one that Ellie has. And
Yep.
so she, gives birth and whatnot and looks down at her thigh, realizes that she's been bit. Later on that evening, we see Marlene and a group of fireflies come in, and, Marlene and her mom, or Ellie's mom, I don't remember what her name was. Basically, they've known each other for their entire lives, and so she's kind of, freaking out, like, I need you to take her, Ellie, and raise her and do all this kind of stuff, but Marlene's hesitant at first. And so basically she ends up taking her and hands her off to one of the soldiers and the fireflies. She just kind of storms into the room and just shoots her blank in the freaking head because she was asking for it.
Yeah, and they don't have to explain it, but like, I'm just so curious how Ellie ended up in Fedra's hands. I guess maybe she's just a kid, so it wasn't much of an option. But then at that moment, did Marlene know something was up with her? Like with Ellie?
Debatable. Again, you don't have much information given from the game.
At
so
this
is
time, we
just
don't
story.
have enough information, right? And so I feel like in this next season, which obviously they're going to do, we're going to find out a little more.
Yeah, because then like
about
hopping back to the first or second episode of the series, the first time we meet Ellie, she's kind of chained up in the Fireflies' house, and you're wondering, like, I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, you don't even know that she was bitten. You just assume she's just a hostage of some sort.
Yeah, at that point, you don't know if she
But
was
then-
bitten. She was bitten.
I think that implies that Marlene and the Fireflies know. I mean, they obviously knew that she was bitten, but you would think the Fireflies would be like, okay, if you were bitten, we're just going to kill you.
Right. So that is
No, it's just more to the story. It's weird.
Right. Well, I guess to move this along, this is the main, I guess, plot of the game as well as the show. Is Joel is basically tasked with escorting Ellie across the United States to the Fireflies headquarters / hospital, because she is one of the only, if not the only, people immune to the fungal infection.
Cordyceps.
Yeah, the cordyceps, I think is how they call it, right,
Yep.
Colin?
Yep.
So this is, I think, where one of my main gripes between the game and the show. It doesn't really hurt the show a whole lot, but in the game you deal with a lot of infected and you deal with a lot of like raiders. Now, the show, on the other hand, seems to kind of minimalize it to a degree. Like almost all of the infected that you see on screen are all in the flashbacks. So after that point, the infection is kind of trivialized.
Yes and no, because they're. I think what they're going for is they're trying to build that anticipation, kind of like what they do in The Walking Dead. Basically, is we're aware that there's infected going around and whatnot, so they're trying to build that chemistry between characters and that everything else. But that anticipation, that fear, that's what they're going for. It's like, okay, these two characters are doing a little character development, but then there's like that suspenseful, ominous kind of music playing, and you think, oh, well, this is the part where, one of the infected. I feel like, what are we calling them? They don't really have like a nickname for them. Like in The Walking Dead, they're called like walkers or whatever. And
Right.
they keep saying it, the infected, and that's kind of throwing me off. Anyway, so I feel like it's more about the suspense that they could be just around the corner. And, I kind of like that.
The more I think about it, I tend to agree with you, Kenny. It seems like the series, they fixate on a lot more regarding like Fedra versus the Fireflies,
Right.
and then Joel and Ellie versus Raiders. Like there's parts where the infected pop up and play a crucial role. But I tend to agree with you, Kenny. Like, if it seems like they go too heavy on the Raider side. And I don't know if that's the same for the video game.
Yes and no. So the video game has a much longer time, I guess, with the individual. So you have 9 episodes each in the series. You have 9 episodes, each ranging from like 45 minutes to like an hour plus, I think, for a couple of them. The game itself is like a 20-hour game if you run through it all together. So you have a lot more time, I guess, learning about how just god awful everything is. Like, some areas of the U.S. are just ludicrously biohazardous to any non-infected life. And then you have other areas that are just like filled with raiders that are, may or may not be cannibals.
My thing is, I hear what y'all are saying, but, Fedra and Fireflies are only going to be in those highly populated towns.
Correct.
Typically, that's where they're all going to be located. There's going to be soldiers of either. But once you get outside of those towns that are populated, what's really going to be the danger? Either nature is going to kill you off, or those civilians that have found small little villages and
trying to irk out
basically
what
do
they
their
can.
own thing. And so, you have the danger of Fireflies and Fedra, but I think they do a good job that the civilian population is also going to be a factor, and they are going to be dangerous, and there are going to be those cult-like, cannibal-like factors, and we are introduced to that multiple times.
Yep. So, Jake, I want to ask you a question. Do you think at the end of the series that Joel is a good person?
I think that's the ultimate question. Immediate answer is no. I think he's
he's a monster.
I think he was in the wrong to do that. I think he was. Well, I don't. So, is that in the video game?
No.
So
The last episode and the last bit of the game are the same. You have Joel just massacring a hospital full of people in the post-apocalypse, a fully operational medical facility.
Is the plot the same? Like where the Fireflies?
Oh,
They
yeah.
have to operate on her brain and whatnot. Is that the whole?
Yes.
So
So the only difference there is in the game they retrieve Ellie because she has passed, almost drowns, and they collect her up, kind of bring her back to life. But then they're like, okay, we're going to operate on her.
So
She doesn't know that it's going to kill her.
Yeah, so I definitely think
That's the
Joel's
thing.
in the wrong. It's one of those things like you save one life as opposed to
It's
saving
the greater
millions, saving
good.
the whole world. Yeah, very good. I mean, I get it. The moral dilemma. He views her as his daughter now. I get it. But the flip side of it, I'm more when I was watching the episode, I was more frustrated with the Fireflies. It was like, all right, you claim this girl has a potential vaccine. Like your immediate thought is, okay, let's operate and kill her. I don't know. It seems like they could do a little more research and have a little more.
So that's another thing in the game.
I know that's just being nitpicky, but to answer that question is like, do I think Joel's in the wrong? Yes, I think he's in the wrong. But the flip side, I think they're all in the wrong. I think the only one that I mean, they didn't even, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. So the Fireflies in the game and somewhat in the show are hilariously inept at everything they do. That they just let this one guy just casually kill all 30 of them.
It was fun to watch. Like, there's a little part of me that was rooting for Joel.
But then you realize, like, oh, he's actually killing the people that are, like, giving up.
Then you realize, yeah, well, there goes their last hope of saying, well, it's not over. She's still alive. Like, you never know. But
Yeah.
I guess, is they going to make another season? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they made a second game, which I can spoil a little bit as well. But I kind of want Colin's impression of Joel as well here. So, Joel and Ellie, how do you think that their dynamic works?
They're dynamic from the beginning. So I'm gonna do this in kind of parts. So in the beginning, obviously there's a little. He was hesitant in the beginning about, it was basically his job, taking cargo from one place to another.
Yep, it's just good business.
Getting money for it. It's just good business, exactly. So I'm all for that. Then, Tess kind of starts to build a relationship with Ellie. And I kind of saw pretty much from that moment on, okay, this is what's going to happen. She's building a rapport with this little girl. She's going to end up dying. I knew that, not knowing anything about the game.
Death flag was raised.
And so basically, I knew she was going to die. The way that she went out, I thought was freaking awesome. And that little interaction between the infected and her, and you see the fibers coming out of the infected's mouth and then go into her mouth.
Yeah,
that was a little weird to me, but at the same time, that was kind of cool. Because you actually see the fibers.
You see the process.
You see them come out and actually move forward into her mouth. So I thought that was kind of cool. But meanwhile, she's trying to click a lighter to basically blow the place up. And then basically, it's pretty much Joel and Ellie from that moment on. And he's trying to be closed off and not really build a relationship with her. Because she's just a package. He's going to deliver her to the Fireflies location, hospital out west.
Yep.
And, basically, you start to see his, let's call it walls. You start to see his walls come down. And, they start to build this relationship. And my favorite thing was that you find that she has this bad pun joke book. And I absolutely love dad jokes. So I was a huge fan for any time they had interaction with that book. And I'm even texting coworkers that are in the same boat as me about the dad jokes. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, as the show progressed, I obviously foresaw what happens in the end. I kind of did.
Yeah. They definitely set it up where they try to make it kind of gray, like his choice, but also you're then almost immediately reminded that these Firefly people don't really have a clue of what they're doing. They're just doing it because it's like the last thing they can possibly do. And naturally, it goes poorly for most of them.
I mean, what did you expect to happen? I mean, a part of me expected that the Fireflies would have all died. Going from Boston to Wyoming. And, they weren't going to be able to meet up. And basically, Joel was going to have to figure out his own thing. That's kind of what I was under the impression of. But I also saw, he's probably going to meet up with Marlene again. And they're going to do their whole thing. And basically take Ellie and do some experiments on her. And then, part of me was like, oh, he's going to have a conscience, grow a conscience all of a sudden, and think that this whole thing is bad, and then basically take Ellie and run from the Fireflies, and they're off doing their own thing. But at the same time, we end up seeing what actually happens.
Right? Which Joel causes a surprising amount of damage. Joel, for the lack of a better word, is like the video game protagonist, but he also kills like 400 people plus by the end of the game over like a 1 year span.
So my question is that accurate in the game of him wanting to go out west, taking Ellie to take him to Fireflies, but also actually just mainly to find his brother Tommy? Is that
Yeah, that does carry over.
okay? All right. So when he gets to Wyoming and finds his brother in this little
And like a little settlement.
little settlement, yeah, exactly. I definitely anticipated something. He's created his own life there, and maybe a relationship with somebody. I definitely kind of saw that coming. But having a kid, the way that it was being drawn out, I kind of anticipated something is holding him there, and then he tells his brother, "Yeah, I've got a kid on the way, and so I gotta stay alive as long as I can to raise my child." And so, that was a plot twist in a way, but I'm wondering if that ends up happening in the game? Question mark.
I would have to look that bit up because I know that Tommy does come back into a picture.
Well, if you know the answer, feel free to drop a comment.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely have to do some research there. And so, they have a little sit down, Tommy and Joel, and they basically divulge information to one another about what they've been up to, and he ends up, helping him leave and gave him a horse. I got a Walking Dead kind of vibe.
Yeah,
Sure,
the Walking Dead kind
Yeah.
of just horse scene.
Horse, yep. And they end up going to another settlement where there's a bunch of cannibals.
Yeah. Let's see. They go from Jackson, Wyoming, I believe, down to Colorado from there.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I actually do want to point out. Fun fact. So they find the dam, right?
Sure.
That's running their little settlement.
Uh-huh.
I've actually seen that dam in real life.
Okay.
Because,
During your time up at Jackson Hole?
during my time in Moran and Jackson Hole for a little bit. And so I thought that was pretty cool that I've actually seen that dam in real life.
Nice. So from there, we kind of see Joel deteriorate like even more. From here, we actually get like a kind of a split. Now, the comment section, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where the Left Behind kind of spin-off DLC game comes into play, where you play as Ellie, and Ellie's kind of like main moment in the limelight, so to speak, where it's all her and her perspective.
Yeah. They do a little bit of that, with the mall scene and her basically taking care of Joel because he got stabbed by some dudes.
Yep. Just trying to think of where from there. Jeez.
To where to go?
Yep.
I
Where to
mean,
go?
Basically, we're introduced to the cannibals. Ellie has a unfortunate scene with those characters. I forget what that character's name is that ends up trying to
Trying to get her to eat the stuff.
well, in that scene tries to take advantage of her, unfortunately. And she basically goes ham on this dude with a
knife.
is that a knife or is that freaking like a
With something I don't remember.
Anyway, some kind of blade. Anyway, I thought that should have been some PTSD later on, but
Yeah.
they don't really do that very well. I guess they kind of do because in the beginning she has all this. She's very quiet in the beginning, and then we get to that point where they find a giraffe.
Yeah.
Which I don't know about you, but when they get to that giraffe scene, I got a very Jurassic Park kind of vibe.
I think that's the inspiration.
It had to have
like
been
it's very
like
clear.
feeding
The
leaves to this
Brontosaurus
animal. Exactly. I was very much anticipating. All right, this giraffe is gonna sneeze on Joel or Ellie. That doesn't happen. And then they go to a more.
That's a bit too on the nose if it did.
Yeah, they go to like a little balcony spot in that building, and you just see like a herd of giraffes.
Yep.
And
Somehow all of the giraffes and the collective zoos from all of the area nearby.
not just giraffes. We're introduced to monkeys too.
Yeah. Just out and about doing their thing.
But let's take a step back. I want to talk about Bill and Frank.
Yeah, the Bill and Frank story now.
I want to talk about that storyline. So basically, you're introduced to Nick Offerman, who I thought did a fantastic job. I'm going to say, I could not see him. If I was told, like, this is this kind of character he's going to play, I feel like they should have gone with a different actor for that character development.
Okay.
But as we're moving on through that episode, I actually want to say that I was proven wrong, and I couldn't have been more happy to be proven wrong. Nick Offerman did a fantastic job with the character development between Bill and Frank and meeting his companion, if you will, and basically building a relationship. And I thought that was pretty cool. And how their relationship with Joel and Tess, and then inevitably Joel and Ellie. So I thought they did a really good job with that little bit about you all.
Bill's a badass, man. He's probably my favorite character of the whole series.
Yeah, Nick Offerman does kill it.
Yeah, he does.
Pun intended.
Yeah, Nick Offerman did a good job. I was big. I think they casted his character very well, and I don't know if that was just because it was a playoff. Ron Swanson being like this very independent. I could just picture him being like this prepper, but
I'm kind of surprised we don't see more of those type of characters, those apocalypse preppers, you know. But we're only introduced to really him. Maybe they'll introduce more later on, but
Yeah, you don't really deal with them in the game.
you don't
Like
deal with
preppers.
Bill or preppers in
Like
general.
preppers. Like people that have like, random like
bunkers.
bunkers and like, repurposed like missile silos from like the Cold War or whatever.
Yeah, like the military leaves his town and he basically goes into, like a Home Depot or some shit, and he just gathers a bunch of supplies
And just goes to town.
and this
Literally.
goes to town and freaking fences it in, electrifies it, and then puts a bunch of tripwires and these little flamethrower things in the ground and torches a bunch of raiders that come in later on, and just see the whole perimeter basically on fire because everybody's trying to get into his location, and then he ends up getting shot. And where, like the stomach or something,
I believe so.
and we find out that he survives that wound. But my question is, what was Frank's deal? Do I have the characters mixed up? Because he was in a wheelchair. Bill is Nick Offerman, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Frank, what's his deal? He turns up in a wheelchair later on in the episode,
He gets sick.
but with what?
I don't know. You'll have to research it.
I believe that character in game is deaf, and something happens to his legs where he has to get wheelchaired around, if memory serves me correct.
Yeah, but in the show, we don't know what happens.
I don't recall.
So if you know that, let us know.
Yeah. So, Jake, as we're kind of like moving towards the end of the series, do you think that
ALS. He is ALS.
AOS?
ALS.
ALS. Ah.
Okay, that
What's
makes
up,
sense.
Kenny?
I was going to say, do you think that towards the end of the series, they do a good job kind of portraying character growth between Joel and, I guess, really just anybody around him? Mostly Ellie. We know that happens, but do you feel like Joel grows as a character?
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I, they definitely show him develop. You can definitely tell that there's a more of a bond between the two, where like in the very beginning, he probably does not give two shits about her. And as it gradually goes on, he cares more and more and more. I wish they probably would have gave him a little more time of viewing her as his daughter. I think they went heavy on that in the very final episode. So maybe they could have like touched up on that a little bit sooner. But I think overall, at least for those, for those two, I thought the character development was really good. Do you disagree? You don't?
No, I think that Joel did what he needed to do to progress, I guess, his own kind of like internal storyline. With him basically not getting over his own daughter's death, but almost giving Ellie the chance to be kind of like fill that gap that was left when his daughter did die, and kind of his progression through those steps. I think they do a good job portraying that in the show as well as in the game. Now, Joel's choices are questionable, and in the second game, we kind of see like the consequences to his actions, so to speak. So, I know where this storyline is going to go, but I don't want to spoil it for you two in particular.
Actually, let's have that conversation.
Do we want to have that conversation?
Let's have
More
that.
spoilers ahead.
No,
More spoilers
Because
ahead.
it's not even prediction if I know how the game
No,
goes.
you keep your comments to yourself. I think
Okay.
that let's let Jake and I have a little soiree over here and talk about.
And I'm just
what
going
our
to mumble and do my
predictions
best not to smirk.
Yeah. So Jake, you start us off. Where do you think this next season is gonna go?
I think Joel and Ellie will reunite with Joel's brother, Tommy, in wherever that commune, that hippie establishment's taking place. I think he's going to go back there. Obviously, the Fireflies are going to be royally pissed off, and they're going to seek revenge and go after him. Because why would they not seek revenge? On top of that, they know the girl's still alive, so they probably want to find her anyways. Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a Joel and Ellie versus Firefly season 2. No?
No, we don't want a reaction. Kenny, you can smirk all you want, but don't say shit.
What about you, Colin?
So here's what I think is gonna happen. Basically, there's gonna be the typical Joel and Ellie interactions with new characters that are gonna be introduced. There's gonna be some side plots here and there, but overall, I think Ellie is going to find out what Joel kept from her. That actually what happened in the hospital, she's gonna find out. So either that's gonna really piss her off, and she's gonna kind of go rogue or become this, tyrant kind of thing, and she's gonna develop her own kind of group, if you will, of immunes. I don't know, maybe not. But then actually what it's going to boil down to later on is that it's going to be a Joel versus Ellie kind of situation. So that's kind of my prediction.
Are there more than one immune person, Kenny?
We don't know yet, but I feel like there has to be.
I mean, I guess just statistically speaking, yes, but
I don't want statistically speaking. I want
and
I don't
spoiler
want
in the
season
games,
2
in
game
the
version.
games, I will spoil this. Ellie is the only person you find so far from what they have released from Last of Us Part 1 and Last of Us Part 2.
So Colin thinks Joel and Ellie are going to split up, huh? I think there's going to be some angst between the two, and they're going to be. I'm sure. I do agree with you. I think she will eventually find out. I mean, it's kind of more of an apocalyptic drama than it is more of an apocalyptic action series. So I think she will definitely find out. But will it be enough for them to part ways? I don't know. They seem pretty attached to the hip.
Yeah, they're pretty attached to the hip. But Joel also lied to Ellie about killing 30 people.
He also saved her life.
So
Yeah, but she was also unconscious. She had no idea.
she saved his life too.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back and forth, but you have to think Ellie was unconscious through all of that. She woke up in Joel's arms.
Now, I will say, I think Ellie will find out. I agree with you. I think they will find out. And I think she is more motivated than Joel to make a difference. Like, I think deep down, she really wants to make a difference and be this vaccine for the whole world, where I think Joel's probably a little more indifferent. He's a little more rugged, like, fuck people, fuck the world. You know, what has it done for me? So I think there will be a division there. But I think at the end of the day, I don't see them splitting up. Like, I think Joel's going to be with her at the end. I think Joel will probably have more character development, and Ellie's going to be like, no, I want it to be this vaccine. And he's going to be like, all right, I'll fight hell and water to help you make that happen in the right way. I don't know. Hell if I know.
I
Kenny's
do.
over here smirking because he knows everything. He's
Because
like,
I know.
Colin and
I'm in
Jake
the-
are complete idiots and completely wrong.
Yes. Which
I mean, if
Joel may
there's
turn
going to
into
be
a muffin. I don't
if there's going to be a vaccine, she's going to have to be patient zero.
All right, tell do you want to know, Colin?
No, I don't want to know. I want this to be like Game of Thrones. I want to find out as
this show I
as
think is too good for me to want to spoil it for you, gentlemen.
Fine, we won't.
I will
spoil it
give
on
you
this.
at least
I'll
that
wait till
much
Colin
respect.
leaves, then Kenny and I offline. Well, I don't care for spoilers.
No, I'm
The odds are I'm going to
interested.
see it online anyway.
So now that I guess we've kind of covered the series as like a whole, I do want to get into like some of my various nitpicks with it.
Oh yeah,
Let's
love
do
talking negative.
So the one weird nitpick I have is that your main characters, Joel and Ellie, their voice actors are characters in the show.
Yep.
I don't feel like they did enough to differentiate their voices from how they sounded in the game. So when I hear them talking with Troy Baker is Joel, Ashley Johnson is Ellie, and when Troy is talking with Joel and them,
Wait, wait, hang on.
what's up?
So they don't like, what's his name? Pedro Pascal.
Yeah,
Pedro
Pedro
Pascal.
Pascal.
That's not his voice.
No,
Not in from the game, no.
no. There's characters.
No, but the
Voice-
show. That's his voice from the show, right?
No,
Are you saying they use the voices from the games for the show?
no. They have voice actors that play
voice
Ellie
actors
and Joel.
that-
Oh, okay.
Those actors are
They make
portraying
cameos.
other characters in the show.
Yes. They make cameos / not cameos because it gave them actually kind of major roles.
Okay, so who are those characters, Kenny?
So Troy Baker is James,
Yes,
and then Ashley Johnson is Ellie's mother.
right. So Ellie's mother plays Ellie, right,
Yeah, she voices Ellie
in the game.
in the game.
And then James plays Joel,
Correct.
that actor.
Yeah, Troy Baker.
Yes.
And it takes me like my brain has to mentally reset. It's like, okay, Joel is talking to Joel, but this person is not Joel, that's James.
Okay, so I guess that wasn't a pet peeve for me because I never played the game, so I never knew.
It's the smallest of things. It's the smallest of things, but it just takes me out where I'm just like, man, you could have at least like, made your voice like more raspy. Like you just sound like you're in a like you're playing the character across from you still.
So for me, going into the show, I knew that there were those things going on.
Sure.
But I didn't know exactly who played who in the game.
Okay.
But knowing before coming over here tonight, I ended up doing a little bit of research, and you said you wanted to talk about that, so I kind of let you take the lead on that. But now that you mentioned that, I end up finding out later on that is the case. So I thought that was actually really cool. Those type of cameos, those type of what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway,
Nod.
Yeah, those little nods. I enjoy that shit.
Yeah, that was, I think, probably my largest one. Just that there. The other one just being, like, I guess the environments as a whole don't seem all that kind of threatening.
The environments.
Yeah. In the game, it's portrayed as, like, everything's, like, hellish. Like, there's just roaming bands of zombies and raiders, and you actually have to, like, put forth, like, serious effort to, like, try to avoid them. But for the sake of, like, television pacing, you can't really do that.
Yeah, their only interactions are going to be in
like in the
populated places.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're not really going to find those infected out in nature, out in the mountains or out in the Great Plains or wherever you find it. Which makes sense, but you think there would be those sporadic infected ones that just happen to get away from a herd or something, if you will. And
yeah, so, like, once they leave Boston, you don't really get a sense that there's that much imminent danger from the zombies.
I was thinking that because they leave Boston and they don't run into any fucking problems until they get to like Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
I was like, what the
Kansas
hell?
City. Kansas City.
Kansas.
I don't know where
Like,
it was.
he just
He just drives.
like he more or less just travels like 2,000 miles without any incident.
Yeah, I mean, like I
in
get
the post-apocalypse.
Yeah, like I get it. It's been 20 years or whatever. Like I'm sure there's some roads cleared, but you think there'd just be more. I don't know.
Like cars everywhere, bodies, zombies, raiders,
that, yeah.
like the whole shebang. But
The whole shebang.
basically the car just rolls up.
I agree with you, Kenny. I did that episode where they're just on the highway and they make it like 2,000 miles without any issues, and then they decide when they hit Kansas City or Oklahoma City, wherever.
Like,
it is,
car's broken.
it's like, oh, we got a roadblock. I guess we'll go through the dangerous city. I don't really want to, but I guess we'll have to. It's like, seriously? It was one of those Hobbit moments where the Eagles drop them off.
It's like, y'all could have just flown us there.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So we get to Kansas City, and what's the kid and the older brother? What are those characters' names?
I don't remember.
Anyways, so we get to that point, and I really they're starting to bring these type of characters and these deaf characters into movies and shows now, and I'm loving this. And they're
What do you call them?
What?
What do you call them?
Deaf characters.
Like they can't hear. Deaf.
Oh,
Deaf. Yeah. So when they're doing sign and they're putting the subtitles on, I think that that kind of stuff actually is really neat. Because you don't really see that in movies or shows, and I think they started doing that with oh my God, what's that John Krasinski and Emily Blunt movie?
Oh,
anyway,
that's going to bother me.
Silence or something. Anyway,
I don't know.
that's when I thought that movie was really good. But that kind of small stuff, I think that's really cool. But anyway, where I was going to go with this was those group of individuals basically start fighting with Joel, Ellie, and those two characters at night, and then you see that truck kind of dip down into the ground, and you see a bunch of infected just come out of the ground and
Yeah,
start killing everybody. And then that giant monster one, is that in the game? Like, do we have any kind of background on why?
I believe so. You don't have too many different variants in the
boss.
game.
Why is he so much bigger than the rest of them? Like, was he patient zero, and that's why he's so freaking massive?
Possibly.
I don't know.
I like how this show, probably because it's from a video game, is obviously there's some plot armor with Joel and Ellie, but
Really, because he gets stabbed and shot a lot.
Yeah, but for the most part, they kill off a lot of characters.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the post-apocalypse. It's called The Last of Us.
Just saying. I like a good show where there's not consistent plot armor going on. I'll admit, you guys will probably disagree with me on this. My one negative feedback, other than the road trip that we just mentioned, Kenny, the 2,000-mile road trip without any issues. I didn't care for the finale. And I know you probably enjoyed it, Kenny, because you played the video game.
Yeah.
And I like it more now after reading up on it more and more about the dilemma and kind of better understanding where all the characters were at in their decision making. But when I was watching it for the first time, when I was actually watching the episode, I was like, it just didn't do it for me. Like, I was kind of lost, confused. I'm like, why is he doing this? I thought they had this plan and mission, and so it makes more sense now. But when I was watching it, I was like, it just happened so quickly that I think it could have been developed for me a little bit better.
Okay.
Leading up to that situation. So my only negative feedback was I didn't care for the finale.
All right. Colin, did you have any various nitpicks?
No, I kind of just went along for the ride. I enjoyed it. I couldn't really make any comparisons between the game and the show. So, if there was anything that I'd nitpick, I kind of got that House of the Dragon vibe where they're, doing a bunch of time jumps. And I know that for a lot of House of Dragon fans, the time jumps really threw people off. But at least with the time jump, you have the same character. Just they were, CGI or made to look younger, but you could see that character is clearly the same character. Whereas in House of Dragon, it's a whole new cast, exactly.
Yeah, they double casted basically, almost triple casted.
But with the time jumps and everything, I feel like that's a very small little nitpick for me. But overall, I thought the time jumps were actually very informative, and they do that little modern day kind of clip in the beginning, and then there's a time hop going back 3 years, 3 weeks, whatever it was, and then that little segment ends, and then you jump to modern day, and that's how we find out that's how Ellie got bit, because she is in the mall with Riley and that whole thing, or that's how Joel and Tess met Bill and Frank, and that's why Ellie is coming along, and they ended up taking a bunch of supplies from them. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me, but I can see where some people might get annoyed with that, but it's not really a big deal to me. It kind of has to be done.
You do need to explain like where the characters come from.
Exactly.
For there to be any sort of, I guess, viewer attachment to said characters. At least in terms of like your main protagonist.
But then, so towards the end we find out that Joel kills Marlene.
Yep.
So who is going to be the next leader of the Fireflies? What character is going to be introduced?
What's your prediction, Colin? Ellie?
No, it's not going to be. Well, there's going to be another leader somewhere, and there's going to be some other stuff going on. But
oh yeah,
it's a good show. I'm looking forward to season 2.
Yeah,
I plan on watching it.
Good. Now I will spoil one thing.
Shocker.
The main theme for the second game is revenge, and how revenge kind of like basically is all consuming for some people.
Nice.
So my Ellie theory could be
Could be right. Could be wrong.
Could be wrong too.
I don't know.
All right.
So other than that, what else? What else you guys got about The Last of Us?
I think that's about the last of it.
Ha.
You know,
Boo this man.
What do you all think about the chemistry overall, actor wise, between Ellie and Joel? Did they have a good cast?
I think they have a good cast.
Good cast.
Yeah.
I think they did well. Well, all around.
All right, wrap it up, Kenny.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for listening to our episode on The Last of Us, the series and the game. We are slowly in the works of getting our Discord put together. I'll have some more information later on about that.
Pay attention to our social media platforms and more in development as we're getting there.
Yes,
But don't
things are
forget to follow us.
progressing. This episode will probably be, funny enough, the last episode that I'll do in our particular format where, my old CRT TV and the funny internet memes in between. But we got some fun stuff planned. Fun stuff that these two guys across the table from me don't know about yet, and some that they do. So follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe here on YouTube, and we will catch you fine folks later.
See you, buddy.
Hey, don't forget we do have a Facebook now.
We do have a Facebook now.
So be sure to follow us there. But everybody have a good night and we'll see you next time.
See ya.